Hi, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of our 2023 Compliance and Ethics Week. Today, we have Kelly Guys, who is here talking top 5 tips for a clean and compliant claim. Doing it right can save you time, money, and headaches. So I will quickly introduce Kelly, and then we will get to the presentation. As a reminder, this is being recorded, so we will send around the slides and recording to all of those that have registered. So Kelly is an expansive and solution-oriented critical thinker with a track record as an architect of learning and growth, which is showcased by the way she has led the multiple organizations she is part of. She has 20 years of experience in the prosthetic and orthotic industry, and during that time, she pioneered processes and procedures that P&O companies can use to become more efficient and profitable. She's a COO and CFO at Cornerstone Prosthetics and Orthotics, where she has worked for the past 20 years. She's also the founder of KG Simple Solutions and Proclaim Billing Services. So with that, Kelly, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Joy, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As Joy said, today we're going to be talking about top 5 tips for a clean and compliant claim. So today, the agenda will be talking about some common denials that we see out in the industry and how we can avoid them, giving you some tips today for billing compliance and some best practices that we've learned that have worked very well for our clinic and other clinics. And hopefully at the end of this, provide you as well some tools that you can take back to your practice and implement to also help you with the idea of clean and compliant billing, which is so important for cash flow and mitigating those denials on the back end. So very basic first thing, our basic info scrub. So there's two pieces of basic information that we really find most of our denials are coming from: patient and physician information. So for the patient, double checking the name. It seems basic, but if the claim, the name on your claim that's going out to that payer does not match the name on that insurance card, we often see a lot of denials for that. Hyphenated names are another one that we do have consistent denials. So just making sure you're taking a look at what that insurance card says against the claim name that you're billing. Verifying the birth date of the patient, we suggest doing that against their driver's license. Sometimes when they're writing their information down on their intake forms, it's not always that legible. And as well, if it's a patient that is a dependent, making sure that you're including the subscriber's name of the insurance and their date of birth as well. So similarly, on the other side, for physicians, ensuring that physician name matches the information listed in Medicare. So a lot of times we will see denials for the physician name, and it's really just as easy as going on and double checking what name is registered with Medicare versus how you've entered that physician name in your system. And when you're billing Medicare, making sure that the physician is PCOS approved. So that's another one that will cause denials and you won't get paid for it. So today, some basic tools to use to help with your scrub. I'm going to show you an example of what we call our billing checklist. So this is just a general list that we came up with as a team to say, these are all of the pieces that we need to double check as we are billing a claim. It can be used as a training tool, not only for your billers, but for the front office staff as well that will be sending claims to you. So it's just a great roadmap, and definitely can share this if this is something that would be helpful for your organization, that just talks about all of the pieces that we need to put eyes on. All right. So again, this is a billing, what we call our billing checklist. This is a link, if you don't know it already, to check if your physician is PCOS approved. A lot of times this is integrated within your software management system, but this is the website that you would go to. Similarly, if you needed to double check that physician name, this is the website for the data.cms.gov. So those are some basic first level scrubs and some tools that might be helpful for our organizations to utilize. So now let's go next to insurance verification / authorization. So this is a huge one and a real difficult one for organizations because every insurance is going to require a different verification process. Some can be online, some you need to call. But what we really emphasize is making sure that our billers are putting eyes on that verification form. So many times we see that verification forms are not completed and maybe not even determined if authorization is required or not. So the suggestions that we use for and how we teach our billers, as you're going to put eyes on that verification and you're going to make sure that it's there and you're going to make sure that it's complete. Did we ask the question if authorization was needed so that we don't have that denial on the back end? And did we have a printout or a call reference number so that if we do get a denial on that back end, we have something to fight with? So those are two big pieces that the verification team and the billers can work together to refine and make that as seamless as possible. The next thing for your billers is making sure that if you do have an authorization, putting eyes again on that authorization. Do we have the right number inputted into our claim? Are we using the correct span dates? Are the span dates on our authorization matching the data service that we're billing with? These are, again, common denials that we see out there. Checking your codes. Are the codes that we're billing on our claim matching the codes on our authorization, as well as the quantities? So many times a practitioner is going to code a prosthetic claim, and they may have code changes throughout the process of them actually coming to a final delivery. And this is where we can find where we may have received and obtained an authorization prior and our codes have changed, and maybe we missed the fact that we increased a quantity or we changed a foot code to a different foot, and can result in denials. If it's a workers' comp claim, making sure that your workers' comp checkbox is marked, that's box 10 on your HCFA, and that you have the date of injury. If you're billing a workers' comp and you don't have those will result in denials. And similarly, if you reverse that, if you're billing a commercial payer, yet you have that workers' comp box checked, maybe because they were workers' comp from a previous claim and now they're billing their commercial insurance, that will result in a denial because the commercial payer is going to see that. They're going to see that we had that checked, and then they're going to deny, thinking it's a workers' comp. And last, if you're dealing with third parties, if you're dealing with IPA plans, who do we bill? Are we billing the IPA? Are we billing the health plan? IPAs can get really complicated and it's very specific to the plan. So making sure as an organization, do we have IPAs? What does that mean? And who do we bill? Are we billing the IPA? Are we billing the health plan? Sometimes you're going to be getting an authorization from, let's say, the IPA, but you're still going to be billing the health plan, or vice versa. So just making sure you have a roadmap for that. All right, so let's talk about some tools. So we see all the things that we need to do to make these verifications happen. How do we actually implement that? So here's some tools. This is what we call an insurance detail. So this is just a SharePoint list. It's something that we have created within our organization and found that a lot of other organizations have adopted this. And it's very simply a list of all of your payers and what the requirements are. You know, if you look at this list, there's just no way any one of us can remember all of the nuances about all of these insurances. And so something like this kind of tool really helps everybody in your organization, from those that are verifying benefits to working claims to working AR. What are the requirements? How do I verify? How do I get authorization? Is authorization always required? So that this is a tool, again, that we use to list all that information. So when our billers are billing, they can reference this if they ever have a question about what may be on an insurance verification. We all have one single resource that we're going to make sure that that everything is correct and that everybody's on the same page. The next thing that we have is insurance templates. So let's just click here and I'm going to show you what we have as far as insurance templates go. So while we have an insurance verification form that we fill out, oftentimes there's different questions that need to be asked per payer. So these are little templates that we've come up with that if you're dealing with an L&I, you can copy this template and you can paste it into the specifics tab of maybe your verification. And then it's a prompt to make sure that you get all of the needed information. So these again are just tools and examples of things that we have found helped organizations make sure that those insurance verifications and authorizations are on point and resulting in least amount of denials that we in the end. All right, documentation requirements. So prescription. This may sound pretty simple, but oftentimes what we're seeing out there is a prescription that we have in the system is not what we're billing on the claim. So as a biller, making sure again that you're pulling up that prescription, putting eyes on that script, making sure what we're providing for the L code matches the description on that prescription that you have from the physician. Is that prescription dated? Is that prescription signed? So these are all things that while oftentimes this is done by the front end at intake or maybe by a compliance officer in your organization, it's imperative that your billers are that double check, that last line of defense, as I say, to make sure everything's good. It's a lot easier to kick a claim back to get fixed prior to billing than trying to fix it after you build the claim and after the payer has the claim. The other thing just to touch on with prescriptions is making sure you know, do we require an additional prescription? So, you know, the idea of you have a preliminary order and you may need to have a secondary prescription, specifically with Medicare and Medicare plans, if you have multiple codes. So I'm not sure if everybody should be familiar with the DWO, now called the SWO. And the basic rule of thumb that we use is if you're billing a claim that has multiple L codes listed, you're going to need to get an additional order. And the reason is that most of the time that physician, excuse me, is not going to be writing all of the addition codes that they want or that you're going to be billing on a claim. So that's just something to make sure a biller is understanding. Again, when does the preliminary order suffice when you're billing Medicare as a standalone order, or when do you need that additional SWO/DWO? The other thing that's very important for your organization or for your billers to understand is, what is your compliance level? Are you an organization that's going to require a standard written order /DWO for all payers, or are you specifically only looking at this for your Medicare or your Medicare replacement plans? So again, making sure everybody understands what your compliance level is so that the billers are really being able to be that last line of defense. Second, your practitioner or your physician notes. So are your physician notes there? Are they required? Are they compliant? Again, very similar to the prescription, does the biller understand when you need physician notes and putting eyes to make sure they're there? Oftentimes, we're not going to require our billers to necessarily read through the physician notes a second time because that's already been done by our compliance officer. But we are going to require that they make sure that they're there. Put eyes that the scan took, that the physician notes are there, and that they are marked satisfies requirements. Delivery form. Ensure all of your information that's required on the delivery form is on the delivery form. So pulling up your delivery form, making sure that we have all of the pertinent information, that it's signed, that it's dated, that we're using the same date of our claim. That's the date of the delivery form, which is also the date of your practitioner delivery notes. So all of those things need to be aligned in order for a claim to go out cleanly. And lastly, waivers. If you're going to be filling out waivers, do we know how to fill out a waiver compliantly and accurately? Making sure that, again, billers are putting eyes on that to say, hey, oh, we don't have this waiver compliant, and being able to go to work with that front office staff before we send that out to make sure everybody's on the same page. So let's look at some tools. So one tool that is very helpful both in our organization, and we found others have found this a very useful tool as well, is what we call the L-code lookup. So this is a tool that really ties all of the Medicare information in one place. And our billers use this tool anytime they're billing a Medicare claim, and often when they're billing other claims as well. So what you're going to see here is this is going to give us the L code, and it's going to tell us a bunch of information from, is there split codes associated with this claim? In this case, there is. This L1845 is a customized to fit. So making sure that we have practitioner notation that we truly did customize this brace to fit the patient. We're seeing a lot of denials out there for this reason. Are add-on codes allowed? We've seen a lot of claims out there where people are billing codes to 2005, or oftentimes these knee braces with add-on codes that aren't allowed, or add-on codes just not simply allowed at all, and then being surprised on the back end that they didn't get paid. This serves as a great tool as well, that you can indicate when physician notes are needed. So it's a one-stop shop for your verifying team, your billing team, to be able to go here and understand this is the temperature of our company and this is what Medicare is requiring. So this is, again, SharePoint. It's a 365 tool that is extremely helpful so that you're not having to go to the article and read through all of this article to get the information, because the reality is people aren't going to do that, right? We want to know what am I looking for, and then do I have that on my claim? So this has been a great tool that you might find beneficial as well. The Dear Physician letters, Michelle talked about, had a great conversation and presentation yesterday about Dear Physician letters and how to get compliant documentation. Again, while your compliance officer may be the one, not your biller, getting your documentation, it's great for your billers to have a basic understanding of when these physician notes are required, what insurances, what devices, and what are we looking for. So these Dear Physician letters are a great resource to organizations if you don't utilize these already. Delivery form requirements. So this is a website, just a Noridian website, that does a really great job of explaining all of the information that's required on your delivery receipt. So if you don't have this as a bookmark, this would be a great place for you to go to if you ever had questions on what it takes to have compliant delivery forms, or when we're shipping devices to patients as well. Waivers, the dreaded waivers. A ton of denials out there we are seeing for waivers that are not compliant. And while we continually educate on this topic, it just seems to be one that's just it's a hard one to always get 100% right. So this is a great tool, again, great section on Noridian that talks about what's required on the ABN. And one thing specifically is this box D. So I'm gonna pull up an ABN example for you, and we can look at this. So you'll see box D multiple times listed on the waiver. And what has to be, and it says it right here, is that all of those fields must be complete on the waiver. And what we found oftentimes out there in the field is that people will fill out the ABN but they may miss right here where it says item for option 2 and 3 because they're choosing option 1. We want Medicare to be billed. This will result in a denial. So it's really good for the billers if there is waivers on file to understand, first and foremost, do we have a waiver and is it compliant? And 2, do we have this waiver because we're just having it as a backup if the payer doesn't pay, or are we truly billing this claim out with the GA modifier because we know it needs to fall to patient responsibility? So this is, again, some great examples you might be able to take back to your organization. We are very visual, and so sometimes it's nice to be able to have these just right there in front of you to remind yourself how to fill them out. All right. Code checks. So now that we've gone through our basic information, we've looked at our prescription, we've looked at our physician notes, we've looked at our verification and our authorization. Now we're getting close to really dialing down this claim, and let's look at the codes and some of the common denial reasons we see on the claim. So ultralight. So ultralight codes, it's on your prosthetics. Ultralight codes, if they are not within the first 6 codes of your base code, they oftentimes are not going to pay. And you definitely have to have a narrative on that claim. So if we were to go to, again, the crosswalk, and let's pull up a 5940, which is an ultralight code. You're going to see alerts about what I just stated. Ultralight must be billed to Medicare only if the socket is made out of carbon fiber, and all insurances carbon fiber. And we're going to make sure that they are within those first 6 codes. And we definitely need to have a narrative on the claim that's going to discuss what that ultralight is related to. It's related to the base code. All right, so let me just click into this and I'll show you an example of the narrative. So example of a narrative for ultralight would look like this: carbon fiber ultralight material 25301, or whatever applicable base code. So this is a really big common denial. That's a really easy one to fix. You simply just make sure that that ultralight code, really we like to see it under as the second code on your claim, with a narrative explaining what base code that relates to. Split lines for RTLT. So we have to split with Medicare our right and our left on 2 separate claims, or 2 separate lines. So we have 1 claim, two lines. And if you are going to bill, if you did bill it all on 1 line, you're going to have a problem. So if you build out a claim with L1960 all on 1 line with a right and a left, you're going to find that you're going to get payment for one side and not the other. And it's because you need to have those separate, right? So anytime you're billing a bilateral on 1 claim, you need to make sure that you have right on 1 line and left on the other. If you're billing multiple quantities, it's perfectly fine. And what you want to do is create that all on the single line. All right. So if you are, if you're billing multiple liners for the left side, you would use a quantity 2 on a single line. You would not separate it out into 5679, 5679. You wouldn't do that twice. That will result in a duplicate denial. They want it all on 1 line. All right. Add-on codes, we discussed a little bit already, making sure the proper add-on codes are allowed for the services you're providing. So when we go back to the example on our resource and we look at knee braces, or we look at the L2005, this is one that we just recently saw on a claim, you're going to be able to see that this does not allow add-on codes, and you're going to be able to see that these are the only add-on codes that are allowed for this knee brace. So as a best practice, you know, sometimes your commercial payers aren't going to follow Medicare 100%, and they may pay additional add-on codes. So it's fine to bill out additional add-on codes if it's outside of Medicare. But when you're working the AR, because you may have a denial, this is a great resource to go to. So you can see, oh, I see that this Anthem plan did not pay this additional add-on code for this knee brace. And I see that Medicare does not allow that add-on code. And it helps you to understand whether or not this is even a legitimate claim to fight. So that is how we would use these type of tools and these kind of denials for add-on codes. Custom fit versus off the shelf. This is a big one that we're seeing as far as audits that are happening. Performance hitting this one pretty hard, where they're scrutinizing whether the custom fit brace that we build or code that we build should have been billed as an off the shelf. This is really going to come down to your practitioner notes and what they did to customize that knee brace, for example. So just cutting the straps is not going to qualify for a custom fit. That's what we're seeing out there. You really need to make sure, did you sew some straps? Did you grind a foot plate? If you're doing maybe an off the shelf AFO, you know, there's certain things that need to be in the notes, such as basically why the patient couldn't be able to do this on their own. So just be aware, this is a big one that performance and other auditors are really latching onto. So as a biller, your organization may have you that last line of defense to make sure what our practitioner stated on their notes really justifies the use of this custom fit code. And if you find that it doesn't really qualify for the custom fit, then you change it to that off the shelf, the prefabricated version. And then lastly, repairs and 99 codes. So repairs and 99 codes are always really difficult, but the biggest takeaway is understanding what your payers will cover for these by report codes. So typically reimbursement's going to be a percentage of billed charges, or maybe you have, it's a flat rate. It's going to be all dependent upon your contract, but really understanding what you're getting paid is important to make sure that you're not upside down with what you're billing. Hey, I'm thinking I'm getting this amount, but oh, yikes, I only get paid 40% of billed charges on these claims. So really just understanding what this is, and always having a narrative whenever you're billing your repairs or you're billing 99 codes. That's going to be extremely important when you're billing those out. Diagnosis code is allowed, making sure that you have the proper diagnosis code allowed, and if there's any restrictions. So again, back to our example here, you can see for the L1845, there are diagnosis code restrictions. So this would be a great opportunity for a biller to look at this and say, oh, yikes, I better go look and see what we have as a diagnosis versus what is allowed for this claim, so that we can mitigate any denials that may happen. All right. And if something is going to be PDAC approved, if it's required. So again, it's hard to remember all this stuff. So we created a resource that tells us whether or not a particular product is going to require PDAC approval. So those are some of the coding questions that we see, or issues that we see out there. So just to wrap up quickly, we're hitting time. The crosswalk is a great tool. We already showed that to everybody. Prosthetic checklist. This is another checklist that we can share out there, but this is a great tool we use for our billing team so that they can understand what they're looking for. If you're seeing that we are billing a replacement socket code of L5700, there should be no foot, right? Or hey, if we're billing a base code of 5301, we should have a foot. And if we don't have a foot, is that because we are providing a satch foot? So this is a great guide that we've kind of created for our billing team, so that they know if there's certain codes that really just don't work together, and they don't have to be 100% up on coding to understand, you know, oh wait, these two conflict, we should ask this question. And honestly, this happens quite a bit. So this is a great tool. Again, willing to share this with everybody to help. And very lastly, modifiers. So making sure that you have your left and right modifier, making sure they're corresponding the proper diagnosis, making sure you have a KX modifier if it's meeting your medical necessity criteria. Understanding your GA versus your KX modifier. This is really important with same similar. So if you're billing Medicare with the GA mod, it will result in an automatic PR denial. If you're, so just because you have an ABN, maybe because you believe, you know, hey, we have a same similar, but we believe that we can beat this in an audit because, or in an appeal, because it should be paid, being that we had a change in condition. And because of that, the 5-year RUL is not going to apply. So in those situations, you would bill your claim with a KX modifier because you have the documentation to prove it. And it will then deny for same similar because of the auto denials that occur in Medicare. And then you go ahead, you're going to submit your appeal and you would include your waiver. That way, if when Medicare looks at that and they deem, hey, no, this maybe is not going to be paid, they will flip that to patient responsibility because you included that waiver. If you don't, and if you are always just billing with the GA, you're going to get a patient responsibility denial every single time. So that's just a little tidbit that we could talk further on. Functional level modifiers, making sure you have your K level modifiers on your prosthetic feet or knees. And if you are dealing with anything in a hospice, making sure that you're using the GW modifier if the services you're providing is not related to the hospice condition. So those are some common things with modifiers as reminders for everybody that we're seeing. Again, just some tools. We've talked about the crosswalk already, so I think everybody has seen that. But this is another great tool from Medicare where you, or Neridian, where you can enter in codes and it will provide you back some modifiers as well. So just another tool that might be helpful as your billing team is learning and growing. So thank you everyone for joining. I hope that this was helpful. If you do find that you want to have that crosswalk, you can always let us know. We would definitely love to give you to trial that. We find it really, really useful for everybody. But just appreciate your time. I hope this was helpful. And if anybody has additional questions, yeah, please feel free to hit it up in the chat or let us know outside of this call.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, we'll wait a few seconds and see if anybody has any questions. So far, just good comments on your presentation and the tools that you shared.
Great.
We'll give folks another minute, see if there are any questions. All right, well, I am not seeing any, but thank you, Kelly, again, for this great presentation. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We hope to see everybody for the last 2 days, tomorrow and Friday. And thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.